can turn now to Rami Khouri. He's a distinguished public policy fellow at the American University of Beirut. He joins us now live from Boston. Thank you for your time, sir. So what message do you think Hezbollah is sending to Israel with this video, which contains this detailed footage of Israel's port of Haifa and other sensitive sites?
It's sending the same message that it's been sending since 2006, when they last had a major confrontation war, which is that Hezbollah's capabilities continue to expand, become more sophisticated, and are more able to penetrate through the Israeli defensive systems. This has been a steady process, really, almost in the last 20 years, practically, 16 years. And the same thing is happening with Hamas in the south, that their abilities, and of course they're linked together in many ways, their abilities have expanded to the point where the old advantage that Israel had over both of them in technology and heavy weaponry, air superiority and all of those things, has been whittled down. It's much, much less. We see the consequences of that in Gaza, where all the might that Israel has used has destroyed much of Gaza and killed tens of thousands of people, but has not been able to eliminate Hamas's capacity to continue fighting in various ways. Of course, this comes at a terrible cost to the Palestinian people. But the Hezbollah and Hamas approaches are most advanced in Lebanon because of the capabilities of Hezbollah, and they just wanted to show that. But they've already shown it in the last 7-8 months with the kinds of attacks that they've been able to achieve inside Israel on military bases and other sensitive targets. So this is making it more dramatic, and there may be other things that Hezbollah has not revealed yet as well.
And we've had the U.S. Special Envoy in Lebanon, Amos Hochstein. Do you think the timing of this video, the release of this video, is linked to that visit?
Probably. It's probably also linked to the raising the morale of the Palestinians if they're a bit down with 8.5 months of continuous attacks by Israel. And it's also probably linked to pushing the internal Israeli dissent against the war and the pressures, the protesters against Netanyahu, to get them more agitated and to make it clear that the hostages can go back to Israel, the war can end if certain conditions are met. And those conditions are that Israel has to completely stop the attack in Gaza and release the Palestinian prisoners and let life resume somehow in Gaza. But this is a deterrent power that Hezbollah has developed, and it's sending this message to multiple fronts, to the Americans as well. The message to the Americans is that if you want to mediate, you've got to be an impartial mediator. Historically, the U.S. has not been an impartial mediator. It's been on the Israeli side, both in the war and in the diplomacy. So again, these kinds of events that Hezbollah partakes in are aimed at multiple audiences, and this is a sign of its growing sophistication as well.
And talking of mediation, Qatar's Prime Minister and Hamas's political leader Ismail Haniyeh have held talks in Doha today to discuss that latest ceasefire proposal. Do you think a deal now would end the tensions between Hezbollah and Israel?
In the short term, yes, because they ratcheted up, the expanded attacks between Hezbollah and Israel in the current phase really date back to the beginning of this latest round of fighting in October. But the hostility between Hezbollah and Israel and the active fighting goes back 30 years or so. So they are linked together, but they also have their separate components. But for the most part, what Hezbollah is saying is that we want to establish a different kind of rules of mutual deterrence and ceasefire. And the Israelis and Americans don't seem to have a clear answer to that, other than to keep The Americans keep saying Hamas has to accept when Hamas has already clearly said several times that it has accepted this proposal. So the Americans and the Israelis perpetuate this lie, essentially, exaggeration or whatever. And the Israelis, for their part, have to recognize that their years of total superiority with the American support have to evolve now. They can't just boast about attacking Lebanon and turning it back to the Stone Age as they're continuously doing. And just today, the announcement that they've made plans for an offensive operation, this doesn't work anymore. And they have to come to terms with the fact that there's a new balance of power in the region. But it's a balance of power that is also possibly leading towards a nonviolent resolution of the conflict. In other words, a ceasefire, ending the current war to the satisfaction of both sides, but then possibly moving on to look for permanent resolutions of the Palestine-Israel conflict and the Israeli conflict with Lebanon and other countries. That's further down the road, of course.
Okay. Rami, really good to get your perspective. Rami Khouri, Distinguished Public Policy Fellow at the American University of Beirut.